Hey everyone, my name is David Dunbar, or the Theme Park Evangelist. So, you guys can probably tell I am sitting in my bed underneath the covers. I usually feel a lot more comfortable when I sit in my bed underneath the covers, but it's whatever. Anyway, so I decided for whatever reason I was just in the mood for a YouTube video tonight, and I'm not doing a live stream because I've been doing one literally every single Saturday or Sunday or Monday, and I decided, well, it's a Tuesday night, and I just literally did a live stream back on Sunday evening, and I'm doing another one in my last scheduled one. Not the last one, but at least like last scheduled weekly one for the remainder of the year. This coming Sunday, which just happens to be April 2nd. And that one I'm going to be discussing why why it's been hard for me, because trust me, nothing is not everything is easy in life, but anyway, why it's been hard for me to be away from Central Florida, like what specifically has been hard for me to be away from Central Florida, because I'll tell you right now, ever since I started dating Katie almost 10 months ago, all I've basically heard from her, and especially since I've gotten to know her so well, is how hard it's been for her to be away from North Carolina. Well, I'm no different. Trust me. I mean, yes, I'm not from North Carolina by any means, but I am still from another state. So, yes, I can relate to her in some ways. And for me personally, it has been hard for me to be away from my home state, Central Florida, Florida, whatever you want to call it, because I'm originally from the central portion of the state. Cannot talk sometimes. Because of the fact that there are certain aspects about the state that I miss. And if you are interested in hearing what I miss about Florida, why I miss Florida, and if God ever gave me the opportunity to move back, what I would do if I were to move back, definitely check out that live stream on Sunday. Now, as of right now, I feel God leading me to move with Katie to North Carolina in the next several years. And the reason why is because, well, if you guys have seen one of my YouTube videos, or more recent ones, I should say, Katie and I are so serious about each other that, let's just put it this way, we're going to be spending a lot more time together than just me going to her house and her going to mine. Let's just put it this way. We already see each other every single day, basically. Even if I have to go to her work or her go to my work, it's going to get to the point where we're going to see each other in the same house every single day within the next few years or so. If that makes any sense at all. And that dropped on the ground. I don't know how, but okay. I have to keep putting my head right here because it's kind of annoying. The light is reflecting right there and it's driving me crazy. So, anyway, I figured, I figured since I'm doing that live stream on Sunday, it almost made too much sense to discuss what it's been like living here in Kentucky over the past 4 years. Now, before I officially get into tonight's discussion, this will not be discussed on my live stream on Sunday to my knowledge. I mean, I might recap it, but I'm going to discuss how my YouTube channel basically started and more or less what my YouTube channel was like back then versus, and then I'm going to lead that up to moving here. And then I'm going to discuss not just what I YouTubed over the past 4 years, but also like personal life without getting too detailed because some things need to be left off of YouTube. If that makes any sense. So let's get into it. So, first of all, I decided I want to become a Universal Pass holder back in January of 2016. I fell in love with Universal back at the beginning of 2016, and then about 4 months later, I got my very first car, like official car, the Ruby Red Ford Focus that you have seen in the past 7 years of YouTubing. Well, almost 7 by December anyway. Now, the license plate, of course, has changed a couple of times over the past almost 7 years. However, that was the same car, and I'm very happy that I have it. It's actually been paid off for almost a year now, and it saved me a ton of money because that was one payment that I had to make sure that I was like, okay, I got a car payment coming up. It's due at the beginning of the month. So I had to make sure that I was putting money aside for the car every single first paycheck of the month. And, it was always fun. And it's here or there. So the whole YouTube channel, of course, started back on Sunday, December 5th, 2016. Everybody should know the story by now. And if you don't, I would definitely encourage you to go back to one of my more recent videos and find out. Or you can even go back and watch the very first YouTube video and go and watch it. The story of how the YouTube channel even started is actually in the description. So, and the whole point of this YouTube video is not to discuss how the YouTube channel started and all that. So I started back in around Christmas time, and 2017 was a really great year. I spent a lot of time at Universal, spent a lot of time at Disney. So Universal, I really enjoyed YouTubing the whole Jimmy Fallon construction, and then going, of course, that was back in April. So April is, one of my favorite months of the year for that. And it's been almost 6 years now since the Jimmy Fallon ride opened. So to me, that's a huge time for me because of the fact that I can reflect back on that. And also April is a lot of I know a lot of people that have birthdays besides Katie's. You got my mother's, you've got Kay, you've got Vanita's. So I've got a lot of birthdays to look forward to in the month of April, and I really enjoy that. 2017 was also a big year for me because that's when I originally graduated from college. So yes, I did not YouTube that, but it was still a memorable time. I had my former middle school friend that was willing to go all the way from Jacksonville, Florida to Central Florida to Lake Wales just to be there for my college graduation, which I thought was super awesome of her and super nice of her. And then May is also when Pandora World of Avatar opened, which of course I went the following month after all the craziness happened. However, though, I did go to Volcano Bay on actual opening day, which was also in May. And then 2017 is also, well, it was a year after I got my car anyway. And I can always remember when I got my car because, first of all, it was, I got it on at the beginning of Memorial Day weekend of 2016, but also, get this, I got the car exactly a month after Volcano Bay, actually no, not Volcano Bay, Pandora World of Avatar opened. Not a month, a year. I'm literally exactly 1 year to the date after Pandora World of Avatar opened. That's how I can always remember when I bought my car. Funny, right? So, there's a reason why I'm so good with dates. It's because sometimes certain dates fall onto the same dates as like theme park openings or whatever, and I always found that really neat. 2018 was not so much of a memorable year for me. 2018 for me personally, I did go to the Fast and the Furious grand opening, which I thought was really neat. And I'm glad that I got to do that. But there was really nothing spectacular about 2018. Oh, another big thing that happened to me in 2017, besides going up to Graceville back in March of 2017, which I thought was really neat. And that was when I was possibly thinking about moving up to the Panhandle to go to college or Bible college. August of 2017 was when my parents, first met Ken Ham for the very first time. And, well, I introduced them, and that's when I found out, oh, my parents want to move to Kentucky. And I basically came to a really difficult decision. And, my parents are talking about moving up to Kentucky in 2019. So I was like, so do I stay down here and live in the Panhandle by myself? And then I had to think about the fact that, I would have to, stay with Publix and, drive at least half an hour to get to work. And then whenever I didn't have school, I couldn't just drive 5-6 hours just to go home. I would have to think about the fact that I would have to spend a ton of money on airfare, because I didn't want to make the decision right away. I wanted to spend some time praying and thinking about it. And when my parents made this decision, I was like, I didn't really like the idea of spending all this money, driving up to Kentucky or flying up to Kentucky just to go see my parents. And I'll be honest with you, when I first brought the idea to Jonathan didn't even really like it. And I really feel like us moving to Kentucky really ended up being a much better decision, not just spiritually, but mentally and physically for us. And the reason why I say that is because if you've seen some of my older YouTube videos where I talk about how I was doing spiritually living in Florida, then you would understand. But just to give you a quick recap, I was spending a lot of time drinking. I was spending a lot of time playing around the theme parks. And I've shared the story of Katie quite a few times. And, sorry, I got something stuck in my teeth. And I was also just working, just for the sake of working, living from paycheck to paycheck. I was never, putting anything away. And even if I had gone off to college, I don't feel like I would have been ready. Financially. Oh, my word. I was not very mature back then at all. And I was definitely not ready for a relationship whatsoever. I would say moving here really helped me to be more ready for a relationship than I was moving off to the Bible college. I might have eventually come around within a couple of years, and there's a chance I might have found a right person for me if I had moved off to the Bible college, but it would have been the right one, like I have found now. I don't know. God obviously had a reason for Jonathan and I to move up here, because I'll tell you right now, my brother, he was mentally not doing very well. He was pretty happy just with his small group of friends. Jonathan was extremely introverted living in Florida, and he also was working at a dead-end job. And I'll be honest with you, other than the fact that he was trying to pursue his associate's degree, I didn't really see a lot of drive in him now. Or, sorry, not driving him now. Driving him back then. The Jonathan I know now, he's finishing his bachelor's and he's going for his master's, and he's now in management at the Creation Museum. I mean, the dude has come so far. I never would have considered my brother for management back in Florida. The brother I know now definitely deserves to be in management. He has come a long ways in just 4 years. All because we changed states, changed environments, and we've gone through a lot of challenges over the past 4 years. And it's incredible. Like, God really had a reason for us to move here. And I'll be honest, my dad had, made the comment that in some ways he felt like it would have been better for us to remain in Florida. Well, in some ways, yes, it would have been better for us to remain in Florida and, figure things out on our own. And my parents could have just been up here and just living life on their own without us hanging around. But in some ways, it's also been great us being up here too. So 2019, my parents started getting the house worked on. The house back in Lake Wales. So we started getting it renovated, and I started getting really close with this guy from New York City. I forget what you call those guys that come in and they do work on your house, but I started getting to know him over the next several months, and introduced him to some restaurants in the area. And Josh Souther just happened to come to visit right before I left, almost like God planned it that way, which I think is so cool. And he found out I was moving to Kentucky, and he got really excited. And it was hard, moving. It was hard knowing that you're going to say bye to your friends. Or, well, for me, it was me saying bye to my friends for the last time. I mean, yeah, I was going to come back and visit. But it was, a different kind of saying bye. It's like, this is not the bye, I'll see you tomorrow, or bye, I'll see you next week. No, this is bye, I'll see you maybe next year or whatever. I don't know. It was that kind of bye. And it was just, hard to swallow, that kind of thing. And I was just like, wow. And, them being the way they were, they tried their best to help me. And TJ and Kate are by no means professionals when it comes to moving or anything like that. They are not experts, but I highly admire their enthusiasm for wanting to help. And when I look back at when we first moved here to Kentucky, that is what I really appreciated about them. I really did. And that's all I can, think about them. And I really thank God most importantly for the fact that they tried as hard as they did. And I thank Jonathan's friends, for that matter, for being there to help. I mean, yes, at the end of the day, I felt like Jonathan's friends were more helpful, but I appreciate the fact that Kay and TJ were completely devoted to being there every single day. And the fact that even though their idea of moving boxes were alcohol boxes, which I found hilarious, I appreciate the fact that they tried. And that's all that matters to me. Once again, I'm going back to the fact that they tried. That's just my personality. I admire people who try. People who don't try, I don't have as much respect for. I hate to say it. So, it was actually around the time that I moved that Hagrid's was getting ready to open at Universal, and I was so disappointed because I really wanted to go to Universal. I had the preferred pass. I really wanted to go and check it out. I had been doing construction updates, but I knew I had to wait until the next time I came to visit. So we came to the actual moving day, and my parents got in their car and they drove off. We had a truck that came and picked up the pod. I mean, we did our best to get everything in it, and whatever we couldn't get picked up, we got donated by the Lake Wales Care Center. So thank you, Lake Wales Care Center. We had a lot more donated than we planned on, unfortunately. And some of it, unfortunately, got thrown out, too, which was really sad. But that's the Lake Wales Care Center for you. I mean, it is a Christian association, organization, whatever you want to call it. But anyway, but as far as the moving day goes, so my parents started heading off on their own. And my brother and I, we got in my car. And we were pretty much right behind them. And it was, weird leaving. Because this was no vacation. This was goodbye at Lake Wales. We'll see you next time. For Jonathan, it was 2 years from then. For me, it was actually only about 6 months. Believe it or not, it was not that long. I never anticipated on being back that soon, but it happened. And we got as far as Tennessee. We stayed at a motel. The next morning, the motel owner was under the impression the cats had peed on the floor, because we had to bring the cats with us, of course. And he said if they had, we would have charged you $2,000. I was like, so yeah, that was comical. And then we eventually got to Kentucky, and when we got to the beginning of the state, my parents were like, oh, guess what? You have to drive the rest of the way through the state. And I was like, great. I remember the very first time I stopped at a McDonald's in Kentucky. I noticed right away they had an obsession with college basketball. I was like, that's cool. And Jonathan's like, oh, yeah, that's right. Kentucky loves college basketball. And the very first time I got to Florence, I had no clue where I was going. And the GPS decided it needed me to get off on US 42, which is actually a lot closer to where I live now than where I used to live, which was 4 years ago. So I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll just get off where the GPS told me to get off. And then it ended up taking me an additional 15 minutes. Where I actually needed to get off was a city called Erlanger, which is actually further up the interstate from where I live. At least 5-10 minutes from here. So if I were on the interstate, that is, it would be an additional 5-10 minutes up the interstate. It really is not too far, but it's far enough. And once you get off at that, interstate, you would go straight down until you get to the Dixie Highway. Yes, I actually used to live over by the Dixie Highway, believe it or not. You take a right, and then you had to take a highway over by a school, and you would just take the side road down and just kind of went from there. And ironically, around the same time we first moved here to Kentucky, there was a fair going on over at that school. And there is a fair that usually is there every single year, except last year when the pandemic was going. Not last year, I'm sorry. 3 years ago, when the pandemic was first going on. Sorry, getting my years confused here. So, yeah, I found that really, interesting. And, when you first move to an area, you're very observant. And, my dad had rented a U-Haul, which ironically just happened to be just down the street from where we were living. So about 10 minutes away from our old house, first house here in Kentucky. So he had already gotten the U-Haul, which I still remember the U-Haul to this day. Even though it's been 4 years. He had this really big U-Haul that had bats all over it. And I promise I'm saying this as a joke only. I thought to myself, well, my dad must be Bats then. I'm sorry, I had to. Katie would punch me for that one. So we jumped in the U-Haul, all three of us, and he took us down to Mall Road. Well, I had never seen Mall Road before, so we went over there, and we did some furniture shopping, all that fun stuff, and yeah, I'm really observant. I'm like, ooh, I mean, I had never been in the suburbs before, like, well, lived in the suburbs before. I was like very impressed. I'm just like, wow, that kind of thing. And we came back, and I remember the excitement I had of just moving to a completely brand new state, and we were in this rental house, and I'm just like, wow, this is so cool. And just I remember when we first like started moving everything in, it took time. It really did. And we didn't even have the pod right away, so like that came after the fact. And of course my parents went on their anniversary, their 25th anniversary. So at this point they've been together almost 30 years. If that says anything about how long we've been here, 29 years this August. And imagine we moved here just before they celebrated 25 years, which was in August, but they decided to go early. I cannot believe how long it's been since we've been here. And I'm not saying where they went because that's personal, but I think that's crazy. So my parents said, well, we want to introduce you guys to a church we discovered back in March, which was only like, what, 3 months ago? So they had us get in their car. The next day was a very, very rainy Sunday. And we went out to, or well, how should I put this? That particular Sunday, I'm very sure we took the long way. I remember getting on the Kentucky 18. I remember getting on the 237. These are all roads that I take all the time. And I remember them taking us to Hebron Baptist for the very first time. And my parents have been going here for 4 years exactly now. And for my brother, it's been almost 4. Sorry, that thing is still bothering me. We pulled in the guest parking lot, visitor parking lot, sorry, at exactly 10:45 a.m., 15 minutes after the service started. For Grace Fellowship, we would have been right on time. And I remember how observant I was. The very first time I walked in there, I'm looking around, I'm looking at the lights, and I'm looking at the service. I got to hear Sean Dobbins speak for the very first time, and I noticed that they were having issues, and that's when they first started making the jokes about the gremlins and all that. And I started getting to meet everybody at the church that day, and I saw how friendly they were. I was like, oh wow. And it was the very first time. Well, it was that weekend I found out that Hebron Baptist wanted to help us with our move. I mean, I didn't even know who these people were. I mean, to this day, I'm still shocked about it. I mean, I don't go to Hebron Baptist anymore, but that doesn't mean I'm not shocked about how kind they were. And I started going to Grace Fellowship because of the fact that, first of all, I want to go to the same church as my significant other. And for another thing, I explained it to my dad like this. Grace Fellowship is a cross between Hebron Baptist and Surf Church, where I used to go for 10 years. And I love the expository preaching that I hear at Grace Fellowship every single Sunday. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I love that church so much. It's actually the preaching is what I love the most about that church. Don't get me wrong, I love the worship style. It's like a passion conference, but I really love the preaching. The preaching is excellent. And they don't really use a lot of visuals in their preaching, some, but most of it, they just expect you to to sit there and take notes, which makes sense. So anyway, for a non-denominational church, I'm very impressed with Grace Fellowship. It really does feel a lot like a Southern Baptist church. So, but that's where I am at currently. But it was actually the very next day after we had moved to Kentucky that I officially met the worship leader of Hebron Baptist, Mark Whitaker. And I really shouldn't have said his last name, but it's whatever now. So he was very nice. He came out to the house, and he helped us with the pod. The pod did finally arrive at that point. I remember seeing it show up, and they parked it on the driveway. And they told us we basically had the next 5 days with it. So he came and he helped my brother move a lot of the heavy furniture inside the house. He was excellent. I really appreciated him, and he was very apologetic that we didn't have a lot of extra help that week. We just happened to move around the same time that Hebron Baptist was doing their VBS, and their VBS takes a lot of effort. Trust me on this one. I helped them with their VBS last year. I could not believe how much work goes into their VBS. I had the interesting privilege of manning their inflatables last year. I know sometimes I go back to the present, but that's okay, or slightly-ish the present. But anyway, so, I'm, watching these inflatables, and some of the kids are pastor kids, some of the kids are, like, just there because of the VBS, and some of them were kids that belonged to some of the parents that went to the church. It was a good mixture. And I just, even for that hour or two that I was standing there, it was a little mentally exhausting. I wouldn't say it's physically, but mentally exhausting. Like, just making sure that these kids are, not taking advantage. And these kids, I just could not believe how much energy they have. I'm just like, oh my word, like, wow. This is crazy. Like, they're pushing each other, they're running up these inflatables, they're coming down like cannibals or wild animals. I'm just like, oh my word, like, where are they getting all this energy? They're trying to come up, their shoes on. I'm just like, I don't know. And some of these kids, they look at me, they're like, who the heck are you? That kind of thing. And I'm just like, what? But it's here and there. So, yeah, now that I've helped Hebron Baptist with their VBS, I fully understand why they could not help us move. It took for me to physically be there to help them with their VBS to go, oh. And of course, I couldn't really help them either because I was working at the Ark Encounter at the time, and they had me doing some crazy hours that week. So there was only one evening I could really help out. Now, trust me, they're going to probably want my help again this year, even though I don't go there anymore. That doesn't mean they're not going to be like, hey, can you help us? That kind of thing, because they need all the help they can get. Excuse me. So, yeah, it was an interesting week, and, that week that the pod came in, and, I remember my brother, if I remember correctly, he got sick that week, And I took it upon myself to finish taking all the boxes out because my parents were like really adamant, like, you've got to get all these boxes out as soon as possible. So I was like, okay, well, why not? And eventually the pod did get fully emptied, and we were able to have somebody did come back and get the pod and took it back. And most of the boxes just pretty much stayed right there in the garage. Oh my word! I need to stretch out my legs. Good grief! Yes, I know you have to deal with the light, but it's whatever. Like, I can only sit crisscross applesauce for so long. I'm used to sitting like that. When I went to middle school, I was in aftercare program after school, and they required us during our devotionals or whatever to sit there crisscross applesauce for at least half an hour. And I think that's why I'm so used to sitting like that for at least half an hour. After that, my legs are like, nope. So you have to forgive me if I can only sit there for half an hour before my body says, I'm done. I'm done. But anyway, so yeah, I'm let me think here. So yeah, my parents eventually did come back from their anniversary, and my mom had gotten a temporary job at a daycare. My brother, I was excited because I was able to get him a job over at the well, I shouldn't say I got him, but I was able to take him to the Creation Museum the day he had an interview at the Creation Museum with housekeeping. And after that he got the job, so that was exciting. So I knew at least he had a job. I had applied for Kings Island when I was still living in Florida. I've never mentioned that, not to my knowledge anyway. And I got hired there back in mid-June of 2019 originally. And I officially started there in early July of 2019. I had some money left over. So it's, not like I didn't have any money. Okay, that's just weird. When I'm sitting like this, I look normal. But when I'm sitting like this, I don't look so normal. I don't know why. Maybe it's just the light. I don't know. I gotta just take that into account. But anyway, yeah, back in 2019, I started with Kings Island, and maybe if I turn on the lamp, that might help. All right, that should help. Oh yeah, much better. But yeah, I got a job at Kings Island doing games and arcades, so at least I had some kind of money income. It wasn't permanent or anything, and I knew I could do better. So I was like, well, what can I do that's more permanent? Like, my dad, in the meantime, was trying to find a really decent job that was along the same lines of what he used to do at Disney World, but he was just having a really hard time finding something, unfortunately. So while he was struggling, I was, trying to find something else more permanent because I knew Kings Island wasn't going to be permanent. So I started looking into the grocery business. Well, I had, gone off to Ohio, to the Dayton, Ohio area at one point, and I had checked out a Meijer. But the funny thing is, I didn't think about that when I was looking for jobs because when I first moved here, yes, I was trying to, go in with Answers in Genesis, but I wasn't getting anywhere with them right away. And I also was looking at other restaurants like Frisch's and, well, I shouldn't say other restaurants, but other like jobs like Frisch's and McDonald's. And I was also applying for dollar stores like the Dollar General, the Dollar Tree. I was literally trying to get anywhere at that point. I was like, I'll take a job. And I wasn't getting anything. I was really disappointed. I was like, that kind of thing. Well, eventually, I decided, well, let me go back to my roots. I'll go back to the grocery business. So, while my parents were out of town, I had an interview with the CEO of Aldi's, believe it or not. And afterwards, I was like, well, I need to go do some grocery shopping for the house. There's like no groceries. So, instead of putting on my GPS like I should have, I was like, I kind of feel like exploring right now. So I was like, oh, do I go right or left? You know what? Let's go left. Why not? So I went left, and I hadn't even gone very far. Don't forget, I was new to the area. I didn't know where anything was. And even though I had just passed by the Meijer, being a guy, being oblivious, and I think also my nerves were getting to me, so I was like super focused on getting to Aldi. So, I'm just driving and I'm only focused on the Aldi at that point. And I didn't even know where the Walmart was at that point. I didn't even see the sign. I was just that focused. And when I was leaving, I didn't even care where I went to go get groceries. I was just like, I just need groceries. So, I decided I'd go left, and then, I went a little bit of a ways. Oh, look, a Meijer, no way. So I went in there. I really liked that Meijer as a customer. So, at this point, I've been into Meijer twice. And I decided, well, I'll apply for Meijer. I was like, yeah, I have nothing to lose. I didn't know anything about the store. I didn't know how badly it was run or anything. At least that particular one. I have no problem with the company whatsoever. And at the time, it wasn't actually as bad as it is now, trust me. So I applied for it, and they had me come in for an interview. So I came up to the service desk, let them know I was there for an interview, and they sent me to HR. And HR was different back then. The guy was from Florida. We sat for 90 minutes. He hired me on the spot. And originally they hired me as a cashier, but I was like, I don't think I could do that. And they were like, why? And I said, well, my first boss told me I never would be a cashier. And they said, well, what makes you think that's true? And I really believed that was true. So I convinced them to hire me as a utility worker, basically a cart pusher. And they were like, okay, well, suit yourself. So for about 3 months, that's all I did. And then a friend of mine at the time, who no longer works there, was like, you should go full time. So it was about Halloween at this point, because I got hired there back in July of 2019 originally. And I was like, yeah, why not? So I easily got full time, believe it or not. And they also promoted me to cashier around the same exact time. And I just started working my way up. Then I became a self-checkout attendant. Then I became a liquor store attendant. Then I became a greeter. And honestly, by early 2021, not needing to go forward too much, I became the official trainer and breaker for customer service. My friend Lizzie took my place. That's how far up I had come. I was literally a step away from becoming a service desk employee and becoming a supervisor. I was that far up. And I threw it all away just to go work at the Orkin counter. But I'm kind of glad I did too. I'll be honest. I hate to admit it, but I'm glad I did. So, 2019 eventually came to an end. I left, Kings Island just before the end of the year, because I knew Meyer was going to need me during the weekend, I had made the decision, well, I'll make such and such day my last day with Kings Island, and then I'll just finish up the remainder of the year with Meyer, and then I'll just focus on Meyer from this point forward. So I pretty much was working Kings Island and Meyer, and I did some really cool YouTube videos for the remainder of 2019. I had TJ come all the way up from Central Florida just to spend about 5 days with me back in September 2019. So it was really neat. I got to see Newsboys Live United in 2019. So you have to go to my Kentucky and Ohio vlogs back all the way to 2019. I have some really neat YouTube videos that you should check out. And my Exploring Florida's Kentucky vlog has gone viral. And also back in 2019, I filmed my most viral vlog to date, which was back when back when Alex Trebek was still alive, and he made Ken Jennings the greatest of all time, and I thought that was so neat. And I got to film that entire thing, the whole Final Jeopardy thing and everything. I'm really glad I have that all on film now. So, and I'm probably the only loser that did it. Just kidding, the only guy who did it. So, yeah. But yeah, that was pretty much all of 2019 for you. Don't believe my dad got on with Answers in Genesis until later on in 2020. 2020 was also a challenging year, not just because of the pandemic. Now, if I'm not mistaken, it was either 2019 or 2020. My dad went through a really dark time. I'm not going to say what happened exactly. All you guys need to know is it was dark enough my great uncle had to come up here. And we literally had Hebron Baptist and a lot of people praying for my dad. I'm very sure it was later. I'm very sure it was after he had started with Answers in Genesis, because my dad's first boss with Answers in Genesis literally provided our first meal free, completely, no strings attached, just for us because of the tough time we were going through, as crazy as that is. And I'm so blessed that he did all that for us. And I remember Hebron Baptist, a lot of people had signed up for like a meal train, and we kept getting all these free meals every single day. It was just so wow, that kind of thing. Like, I never would have expected that in Florida, and I never expected moving up here and that happening to my dad and getting all these free meals. I was just like, whoa, that kind of thing. And it happened. And what's also crazy? Back at the beginning of 2020, Answers in Genesis, where all this the Ark Encounter did do a hiring event. Well, we didn't know, my dad and I did not know the Creation Museum did a separate hiring event. We only knew about the Ark Encounters, which the Ark Encounter is the bigger of the two attractions. And if I remember correctly, my dad and I had wanted to get on more of the Ark Encounter. And when I first started getting interest in Answers in Genesis, my heart was with the Ark Encounter. Sorry, my heart's right here. And that was the one I always wanted to get on with originally. So, and my heart was with guest services back then at the Ark Encounter. So, I'm showing up for these hiring events. I'm all excited. And, excuse me, the very first time they told me, well, we'll contact you in a few weeks. Here's the crazy part. When I showed up to the Ark Encounter for their hiring event, it was hard knowing that they were going to be closed down the very next day. Like, at this point, they knew. Actually, no, I take that back. If I remember correctly, they did or did not know. I don't remember now. All I know is they had the hiring event, and they end up shutting down the very next day. Like, as crazy as that is. Like, who would have ever expected that? I don't remember if they knew it was going to happen or not. I don't remember anymore. But I was just like, wow. And we all remember the pandemic. It was a disaster, so we don't even want to think about that. So, 2020 was an interesting year. I remember when I first went back to the Ark Encounter when the place first reopened again, and the crowds were pretty intense, and I finally got to do some of my very first Ark Encounter vlogs. And the reason why I was able to get the Ark Encounter and the Creation Museum originally, for those of you who were wondering, dude, how are you getting in the Ark Encounter and the Creation Museum for free? So, originally, even though I wasn't working for Kings Island anymore, they still recognized my Kings Island pass. I know, weird, right? So, as long as I showed my Kings Island pass, I was able to get in for free. I felt like I was cheating the system, so to speak, because I wasn't working for, Kings Island anymore. But at the same time, I really didn't have the money to just throw away. So I would show my Kings Island staff pass, and that's how I got in for free. I was like, oh, why not? It works. And when I went to Christmas time for the very first time, I automatically got in for free anyway. Because everybody gets into Christmas time for free. And I went for the very first time to Christmas time on Wednesday. No. Sorry. Take that back. It was Friday or Sunday, something like that. I'm very sure it was Friday. Friday, November 30th, 2020. And when I went to Christmas time for the very first time, it was mind blowing to me because I had never been, to a Christmas event where you get a free meal and you get to see Christmas lights and you get free parking, all for the price of one. I never have gotten that before. Growing up in Central Florida, I hate to say this, but let's say Mickey's Very Merry Christmas Party, that's $100 event. I never got to attend that as a guest. Ever. I worked it, but I've never attended it. And the $100, what does that get you? Free admission to the park, free hot chocolate and free cookies, that's it. You still have to pay for the parking. You still have to pay for any food and beverages you want in the park. The only thing you get for free is the admission, the hot chocolate, and the cookies. That's it. I mean, to me, that was huge. I mean, 4 years later, or 3 years later almost, yeah, I'm way more used to it because I have, this will be my fourth Christmas time in a row. But so we'll just say 4 years later. But 4 years later, I mean, yeah, of course, I'm used to free Christmas events because I've been living here long enough that this is, not a big deal to me. But still, the very first time you get introduced to something like this, of course, it's going to be a big deal. And the very first time I saw Christmas Town at the Creation Museum, I was very impressed. There's only one other Christmas event called Christmas Town to my knowledge, and that's at Busch Gardens. And that also costs at least $100. And that's not even including your parking. Once again, your parking once again for Christmas Town costs another $25 at least. So I am very privileged to be living where I am and working where I am. I can promise you that right now. And I love Christmas Town. I loved working it last year. I was very privileged last year. I got to work Christmas Time and Christmas Town. When does that ever happen? Like, cool, right? And I mean, yeah, in a couple of years, it may not be as big of a deal to me, but I'm gonna think about it now and go, yeah, that was cool. I'm glad I got to do that. But yeah, Christmas Town, I would say, is by far my favorite of the two Arkham County Christian Museum Christmas events. And there's a lot of reasons for it. And I always tell everybody every year during Christmas Town that it's my favorite of the two events. And a lot of guests are noticing that too. Because I have had a lot of guests that come up to me after the 4D Theater show or the Planetarium show and, talk to me about it. So, yeah, I definitely know. But anyway, I'm getting almost to the hour mark here, but 2021, did come around. And that's when I was either seriously considering leaving Meyer at that point or transferring out of service department. I was so tired of customer service department. And I looked ahead to see when the next AIG job fair was. And I saw it was on Wednesday, February 17th of 2021. So I basically was like praying really hard, like, okay, I need to make sure I'm off by a certain time or I'm just going to call out. Like, they better honor my request. So I basically made sure I was available. I saw what time the job fair ended, so I told them what time I need to be done by. And I prayed really hard. As soon as that schedule came out, I was so blessed. I was still able to work. I was working 6 to 2:30. I was like, yes. Yes. I was so happy. So I literally went from work to the Ark Encounter, and I pulled up to the parking lot, and once again, I got it for free, but this time I was there for the job fair, so it didn't matter anyway. And after that, took a bus to the answer center, and Jerry Long, my first boss, my dad's first boss, was looking for me. And little did I realize he was going to hire me on the spot. What I believed was I was just, talking to him for half an hour. And he hired me right then and there. I literally lost it. And trust me, in just 2 years, I have big time increased my hourly rate. My back was starting to hurt leaning against that wall. So I decided to sit up again. Do crisscross applesauce again. I originally started out in culinary at the Ark Encounter. I originally started in Amzar's Kitchen. My official hire date was February 17th, but my official start date was March 22nd, 2021. So I've been with the ministry over 2 years now. And I was actually it was originally supposed to be March 10th, but some idiot decided that he was going to do his paperwork for Answers in Genesis while he was on vacation back in 2021. I wonder who that was. Anyway, you didn't hear that from me, so yes, back in 2021, if you're ever interested, Jonathan and I did go down to Central Florida on vacation, and you are always welcome to go back and look at my Central Florida vlogs if you ever want to go back and watch any of those. As the first 7 to 10, I don't remember exactly which ones, but yeah, that's what I was, where I was when, or just before I started with Answers in Genesis. And I had already gotten the time off from Meyer at that point. But anyway, excuse me. I originally started off in Mazzaro's, and they eventually put me on Deck 3 Snacks, and then I worked my way to Deck 2 Snacks, and then Deck 1 Snacks, and then I became the breaker for all the snack stands. Excuse me. Then they put me over in the funnel cake stand, and then I transferred to guest services the next year, March 13th, Sunday, March 13th, 2022. And I originally started off in the Answer Center, and then April is when I first started working on the Ark. I was actually the very first employee to work Deck 1 Grader and guest services, which I found hilarious. That's when I found out my current girlfriend, Katie, was interested in me as a potential boyfriend. I originally found out that I was interested in her back in December, on Wednesday, December 1st, 2021, but I had already talked about that in another YouTube video. So, all of April, I worked on Deck 1, she worked Deck 3, and when I found out, yep, she's definitely interested in me. And then May of 2022 is when I worked my very first homeschool conference, at least for guest services, not for culinary, because, I had already worked in culinary, all that. And they stuck me on Deck 3 grader the whole week of the homeschool conference. And it just happened to be really hot that week, and I ended up getting a really bad stomach virus, and I wasn't able to go with my dad and my brother to Canada, unfortunately. So I ended up staying behind, and I was able to help Answers in Genesis / the Ark Encounter more with their homeschool conference. So it kind of worked out, and I got more hours out of it. And I got to spend a little time with Caitlin, so that was kind of nice. And shortly after, my brother and my dad came back, and my brother started planning out his birthday, and he decided, well, I want to go to the Newport Aquarium for my birthday, and I just started deciding, like, who I want to invite, and I really couldn't get anybody to agree to go. But then I thought about Katie, and I was like, well, I really like Katie a lot, and I feel like this would be something that she and I would enjoy. So I asked her, and one day at Deck 3 Snacks, we were both in guest services at the time, but we just happened to be coming out of devotionals, and she said to me, I talked to my mom, and she said that I could go. Ironically, she had made the decision on her own that she wanted to go, but we both got very excited, and eventually Jonathan's birthday / our very first date came along, and she met up with us just before we finished up at Tom and Chia. It was my very first time there. And that YouTube video, Exploring Newport, Kentucky, has over 400 views now, believe it or not. And Katie basically came by just to let me know where she was going. So, I mean, you guys have already heard the story. So, to fast forward through the entire thing, we got about halfway through the aquarium because Katie and I had decided we're going to go through the aquarium together. And Katie asked me halfway through the aquarium for the very first time if I would like to be her boyfriend. And here we are, almost 10 months later, and now we're so serious about each other. We're, talking about basically living in the same household together in the next couple of years. And if this helps say anything about us, eventually in the next couple of years, I'm going to be saying I do, and she's going to be saying I do to me, as I'm going to be saying I do to her, and she's going to be saying I do to you. So I'm dropping hints without actually saying anything. So if you're smart, you'll know. And if there's anybody who just happens to stay an hour into the video, I'm impressed. And we'll actually hear this and go, "Aw," that kind of thing. It's incredible how you can start off as just friends, at first, and then, 10 months later, you're best friends forever, you're best friends for life, whatever you want to call it, and you've got, this really serious, strong relationship. Things can really change in just 10 months. You don't know. You just don't. I never would have expected to sit next to her 10 months ago, or almost 10 months ago, on that bench. And trust me, when we first sat next to each other on that bench as friends, she was here, I was here. These days, we're like that. This was literally the last time we sat this far away from each other. We don't sit that far away from each other now, not unless I'm sick. And that's the only time she ever sits away from me. But otherwise, she doesn't like it when I sit that far away from her now. The last time she actually wanted to sit that far away from me was when we were just friends. But the whole point of where I'm going with this is, when I sat in there, or when I sat next to her on that bench, even though there was a gap between us, I didn't stop and think, this was the last time I'm going to be sitting next to Katie on this bench as a friend. I didn't stop and think, on that bench at that time, I'm going to be marrying this. Well, I shouldn't have said that, but I just did. I'm going to be marrying this woman the next couple of years. Or I'm going to be getting engaged. I shouldn't be saying this, but I'm doing it anyway. I'm going to be getting engaged to this woman at the end of next year. Or I didn't stop and think that, this is a woman I was going to be literally saying I love you to in the next few weeks. That part I was not so worried about. Like, you don't stop and think about those kind of things right away. You just don't. And if you were wondering what happened to me from June of 2022 to December of 2022, well, now you know. It's literally just been my relationship with Katie just ever so growing. I mean, other than the 2 trips I made to Tennessee, which, I'll be honest with you, I really feel like Katie has had a huge impact on my interest in Tennessee. I mean, yeah, it would have happened, the trip to Tennessee, back in December. So, like 3 months ago. But I'm going to tell you guys this right now, straight up. It was because of my relationship with Katie that caused me to fall in love with Tennessee as much as I did. That's the reason why Tennessee has such a memorable part of my life now, because I fell in love with Katie, because we dated. Sometimes some people don't see, like, for example, my parents don't see Katie the way I do, but you know what? And this is how I'm going to end the video, because you guys already know where we're at now in 2023. When I think about Katie now, I think about her this way. We started off as friends. We're soon going to be a whole lot more than that. When I first started dating Katie, I never would have expected to go anywhere with her. We've been to Pigeon Forge and Gatlinburg twice together. We're going to North Carolina for the very first time together next week. And she's already planning on taking me there again next spring for the Daffodil Festival. She just told me today. And, we're obviously going to be celebrating the holidays together for the rest of our lives. There's no brainer there. And, I never would have expected this, when I first started dating her. was so sure this was just another casual relationship. Little did I realize how serious this was. Like, my parents might think, oh, she's not that serious. It's like, but yeah, when I think about her, I think about a lot of things. I think about our trips to Tennessee. I think about all the trips we've made together. I think about all the memories we've had together. We've only been together 10 months. I think about all the places she's introduced me to, all the things she's introduced me to, all the movies. I think about even the corniest things like the cleaning projects we've had. Sometimes I think about how our arguments have really helped our relationship improve. I think about the fact that she's helped me to open up more too. That's another one I really think about with her. And I know this is going to sound silly, even though Caitlin was the one to introduce me to Buc-ee's, it's Katie that helped me to fall in love with it. And if it wasn't for Katie, I probably wouldn't like it as much as I do now. So, God obviously put Katie in my life for a reason. And I see many reasons why Katie has had such an impact on my life in just 10 months. And I wanted to take an extra few minutes at the very end of my video, even though it's been going on for over 70 minutes now, to let you guys know, sure, I could have, moved to Florida, remain in Florida. I might have found a right one, but it would have been the right one. And there's just been so much evidence from God that Katie is the right one for me. And I really don't know how else to put it, but I know 100% this is the one that God wants me to marry. This is the one that God wants me to spend the rest of my life with. I mean, sometimes my family may not always agree with her or like her or like her as much as I do, but I have nothing but peace with her. And she's done nothing but help me to grow in my Christian walk. So I will see you guys in the next vlog. In other words, my live stream on Sunday. So, and I promise that one will be a whole lot shorter. So I'm going to go ahead and edit this YouTube video, and I know it's really late, but I'm going to go ahead and head next door to the clubhouse, and I'm going to go take a hot shower, and I'm going to go ahead and shave this stubble off. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to crash because I got a 9-hour day tomorrow. So I will see you guys in the next vlog. And always remember, you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. Have a great night. Peace out.